Well, good. Well, I want to wish everybody, wherever you are, a warm welcome today. It's always, I don't want to use the word special, but there's something found, I think, when I'm in Isabel's presence, and I'm so glad that she can be with us today. And I was thinking a little bit about Martin Luther King's birthday, and just a colleague of mine in New York is actually offering a series of racial equity workshops beginning next Monday, Diane Goodman. And so I'd like to, maybe what I'll do is I'll share the link, because she calls it Doing Our Own Work, White People Learning, Healing, and Acting for Racial Justice. And it just happened on my desk last week, and I just wrote to her and said, I'm going to share it with all the lists that I belong to. So I just want to at least name that this morning. It feels appropriate. But I want to again wish everybody a warm welcome.
And I also want to wish all of you, and Isabel, I've been so looking forward to having you with us all weekend. I was saying, oh, Isabel is going to be here on Monday. And I had the inspiration to do a big talk, which we haven't had for a while, on focusing in activism, and I would love Isabel to be part of that. So just flagging that up as something that we could really look forward to in early March. So if you have any ideas about that, write them to me. And I think, Isabel, that what I would like to say about you this morning is that you have a very unusual combination of activism and spirituality and focusing, and the kind of a protest spirit that we need, married to a deep sense of hopefulness and trust, and embracing the whole us, including the people that we're upset with, and I love that about you.
Thank you, Lynn and Melinda and everyone else for showing up. And here's a bit of a disclaimer, right? I'm a human being having a human experience, and really noticing what I gotten better at throughout the years is noticing when I'm out of alignment with the divine, whatever the divine may be for me in that given moment, right? And so where I often say for myself that what I used to do was that I would take the elevator to the depth of hell and then never come back, right? Forget to press the up button. And now what I really am more conscious of, it's how long I stay there. And that's only a place to visit and not a place for me to live in. And so noticing that for myself, right? So I want to do two things today. I'm going to read a poem, and then I'm going to do a sort of like guidance or attunement or connecting with. And then I'll show you some pictures. And what we're going to work with today is it's really getting a felt sense of how we are around these conversations, right? Because often we are intellectual and we are in our head about all of these things, but we don't have a felt sense of how to be with certain things. And if we don't have that, then we can't be with that with someone else. And those conversations can be really difficult. So that's the intention. I also want us to intend to be together and share, the invitation from Dr. King around having a dream, but most specifically this particular writing, which I don't think people are really familiar with, and I send it out, and you don't have to have read it. This is not a test, it's not a class. This is really being in the experience and being in this moment. So the first thing is this poem by Naomi Shibanaye, and probably the poem that people know most about or heard more often is the one about kindness, which is a beautiful poem. But this one, it's called Eye to Eye, and I feel like something about it touches me for today. And I'll put it in the chat, or I'll send it to Lynn so she can send it out later on. So, Eye to Eye. Please forgive this interruption. I'm forging a career, a delicate enterprise of eyes, yours included. We will meet at the corner, you with your sack lunch, me with my guitar. We will be wearing our famous street faces, anonymous as trees. Suddenly, you will see me. You will blink, hesitant, then realize I have not looked away. For one brave second, we will stare, opening from borderless skins. This is my salary. There are no days off.
Mm. Mm. Wow, that's amazing.
And so the reason why this piece speaks to me, it's because there are no days off from us holding each other and looking at each other in our eyes and seeing each other's humanity. So this is a holiday, right? Which for many of us mean resting, taking time away from. And for me, really what it means is that we don't take time away from holding each other's humanity, for holding each other's authentic self. In the Buddhist tradition, our own Buddha nature, for seeing the Buddha nature in other people. So that's no break from that, right? There's no breaking away from that when we're walking down the street here in New York City and we see a homeless person in the corner. So my wife, who always knows I talk about her, she doesn't participate in anything because she has to prepare. Around where she works in Astor Place, and I don't know if you're familiar with New York City, Astor Place and Broadway is really busy. It's kind of like a congregation of people. And she knows every homeless person around there by name, and she keeps track of them, right? She knows when they haven't been around, and then she asks the other homeless people, have you seen so and so? And then she hears that so and so was in the hospital, that so and so was, in a treatment program. And I just love that about her, that she goes beyond looking at the person laying on a blanket or laying on a cardboard, and looks for this person's humanity and who they are. And who they are comes through by knowing their stories, by knowing their name. And so I appreciate that. And so the next thing I would like to invite all of us into is to take a moment to really notice in the shoulders of who you stand today. It may have been a mentor, it may have been a teacher, it may have been a friend, it may have been a tree. And the way of noticing that is to bring to this moment curiosity as to when was the first time that you realized that something was off, that something was different. that there were some people on the fringes and some in the inside. And you only welcome in that moment and acknowledging it, and then setting it aside. And now the invitation is to notice, when was the first time that you realized that you were going to dedicate yourself to being a bridge builder? Whether you were doing that as your work, your passion, your hobby. When did you first realize that for you, building bridges was more important than tearing them down? And that too, we're going to set aside. And what you're going to notice now is in what way do you want to continue to move through life, building bridges in a way that is effortless? Whatever that may be, you're going to hold that, not with a closed fist, but with an open palm. And in that open palm, you have the experience of someone else holding your hand. Because this work can only be done in the collective. It can never be done alone. And whenever you're ready, we'll come back here to this moment. And we are breathing the same air, even if we are separated by distance, by geographical location. We are still breathing the same air. And our heart is vibrating together. And so I'm going to show you, I'm going to share a photograph with you. Okay, Christine, can you allow me to share? Thank you. Share a photograph with you here. All I want you to notice is what happens in your body when you see that. There's really nothing to do, that's nothing to say. Just what happens in your body when you see the photograph. And we're just noticing the sensations, what happened, what's going on, what's the attention, what's there enough. What is that? What picture is that? Who are those people? And who those people are. It's a photograph taken in January 6th during the insurrection. And why am I showing that, may you say? And part of the reason for showing that, it's because Dr. King talks about in this, this was his last Christmas sermon. And then a few months later, he was assassinated. And I feel like he has some, he had a kind of like a premonition that maybe his life was coming to an end. And, Even in his writing, I think he's really focusing in the collective, the unity of who we are, right? And so he talks about nonviolence in that writing as a philosophy, not a strategy.
Mm.
Nonviolence as a philosophy, not a strategy, right? And when I read that, to me, nonviolence as a philosophy and not a strategy is an embodiment of nonviolence. And what is nonviolence, right? I don't think that is necessarily, I'm not hitting someone, but I can maybe hurt someone with my words. I can hurt myself with my thoughts, right? And so the Buddha said that we would say certain things about ourselves that we would never even think about other people, right? So imagine that the things that we say about ourselves, we wouldn't even say about others. We wouldn't even think them. And so when I read that, nonviolence as a philosophy, what came up for me is where and when am I not in that space, not practicing that? You know, am I not practicing that when I'm on the train and I'm so tired and I'm like riding and rushing to get a chair and trampling over the other person that is in front of me so I can get to that chair? Is that a violent way of being, right? Is it when I'm with my partner and I have a disagreement and I'm like, you know, my point or no point, my view or no view. Even though I'm not saying that, but I'm acting in that way. And so for me, that piece right there was kind of like, oh, this is a practice. Nonviolence is a practice. It's a way of being. It's a way of embodying. And Dr. King talked a lot about that. He talked about, you know, that we are interdependent. And he talks about this ongoing in this writing. We are interdependent. We are not alone. I didn't just get here on my own. I stand here on the shoulders of my ancestor, right? And my lineage of my mom and the lineage of my dad, you know, all the people that contributed for me to come to this country. My aunt who contributed by um, um, allowing my mom to come here first and then her taking care of me, right? And so that's those people that I saw physically contributing and those people who I maybe don't even know that contributed. So he talks about those pieces. He talks about um, learning to live our lives as brothers and sisters, right? And he says, this sounds harsh. We all got to learn to live together or we will perish together as fools, right? How powerful is that? That is in the living rather than survivor of the fittest, that is in the togetherness, it is in the connection that we will actually be able to survive. So he says that, and I was like, oh, wow, this is really, really powerful. This is really a piece that if I can remember that is not as an individual that I'm going to survive, that is, it is as a community, that is as a part of a group, just like this group, right? And I'm referencing this group because this group came about out of adversity, right? This group came about out of isolation. This group came about out of all of us facing death, right? Whether we died or not, right? Some of us survived and there were others who didn't. So this group came about out of facing death. And it came about out of wanting the wanting to connect with each other was actually stronger than the wanting to isolate, right? And that's what we were being told. We were told isolate, stay to yourself, keep 6 feet distance, don't interact to anybody. And yeah, we found a way to come together and survive, right? And Lynn found a way for us to come together, for us to connect. And I am pretty sure that whether you know it or not, that this Monday morning gathering sustain you during those times when we weren't having contact with anyone else but the household that we were in, right? It sustained you. And I think that that's what Dr. King is talking about. That if we are not pulling together, we're pulling apart. That when we are seeing another or othering someone else, and this is Steve, and I don't think he's here when he talks about the othering, what we do is that we separate. And when we separate, we're not strong, right? And so the other thing in this, and I'm going to play you a little bit of this, and I will put this link in the chat. The other thing that he says is that if we are seeking, and I love this, and that someone that I know and who I love dearly, and is no longer with us, that used to describe himself as a seeker. And that again says, if you are seeking to develop a just society, then he says, the means are important. And Malcolm X say always, by any means necessary, right? He did say that. But the means are important, right? And they are important because in our seeking justice, right? That's why I show you that first picture, right? January 6th insurrection. It's not that what they were seeking. It's how that was so, how the seeking of that came about, right? How that defending of what you believe in came about. And so noticing that for ourselves, that when we are in the space of want to defend, wanting to create, wanting to bring people together, that we may be alienating people just in the way in which we show up, right? In the way in which we speak. And so I'm going to play this little bit of the video of Dr. King's video, just so you can see and be with what he talks about. And it's so powerful. I mean, it's one thing to read what he says, and it's another thing to hear in his own voice what he says. And it is just amazing how even in today's time, every single thing he talks about, it's still applicable, right? It's still current. And we're not talking, he said this yesterday, right? So he was born a year before my mom, and he died when I was 4. So you do the math. I'm not going to tell you my age. But what I want to do here is that I want you to hear him in his own voice, what he says about this sort of like interconnectedness, how we are all interconnected. And we celebrate Dr. King once a year, right? And this is the kind of thing that I think it's keeping alive not only his dream, but keeping alive his philosophy, and his philosophy on nonviolence in our daily day. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to listen to this, and then we're just going to sort of like, and this is laying now in my head, we're going to notice what he said evoke for us. What did he evoke? What he said. And so it's not about, the whole thing, but it's about what he says spoke to you. And that's the interconnectedness that we're talking about. And we can only get to that when we bring that explicitly to all of us, so all of us can see that at some point or another, as he say, We are tied together. We are tied together. And so I'm going to share this. This is a beautiful piece of Dr. King speaking. And I just love it. I can hear this 100 times, and I do. That's the thing with me. I do things like that.
All caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny, and whatever affects one directly, yes, sir, affects all indirectly. We are made to live together because of the interrelated structure of reality. And did you ever stop to think that you can't leave for your job in the morning without being dependent on most of the world? You get up in the morning and go to the bathroom and reach over for a sponge, and that's handed to you by a Pacific Islander. You reach for a bar of soap, and that's given to you at the hands of a Frenchman. And then you go in the kitchen to drink your coffee for the morning. That's poured in your cup by a South American. Or maybe you want tea. That's poured in your cup by a Chinese. Or maybe you're desirous of having cocoa for breakfast, and that's poured in your cup by a West African. And then you reach over for your toast, and that's given to you at the hands of an English-speaking farmer, not to mention the baker. And before you finish eating breakfast in the morning, you're dependent on more than half of the world. This is the way our universe is structured. It is its interrelated quality. We aren't going to have peace on earth until we recognize this basic fact of the interrelated structure of all reality.
Just take that in, right? Just take that in and notice what came in for you as you heard his voice. And he described how we, even before we leave our house, our lives have been touched by different people. Some of them we may know, some of them we may never know. And you know, it's not the sentences, but what came alive for you when you heard this. And it's okay to unmute and just share with the community what came alive.
This is June. What came alive for me is how very true that is, what you said, and how easy it is to forget that.
Mm.
Yeah. How easy it is to forget that. The comfort of the connection. Some people are typing in the chat, and I know for other people, maybe difficult to see the chat. So if it's okay with you and you feel comfortable and you want to just verbalize it, you know, he says at the very beginning of that, he say, it really boils down to this. All life is interrelated. He doesn't say some lives are interrelated. Just Black people's lives are interrelated. Just white people's lives are interrelated. Just Chinese people's lives are interrelated. He say all lives are interrelated. All lives. And to me, that's like, wow. My granddaughter, who's one, every time she sees something new, she says, wow. And that's what I want to bring to this to this heart, that sort of like sense of wonder, right? We are made to live together because of the interrelated structure of reality. We are made to live together. So just notice that. We aren't going to have peace on earth until we recognize this basic fact of the interrelated structure of all reality. He doesn't say the people in Ukraine are not going to have peace on earth. You know, he says we, the collective we, are not going to have peace on earth. Because this is the same speech where he say that I cannot be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. So I cannot be all of who I am unless you are all of who you are. Right? So just pausing here to see what's arising.
I think what came to me, Isabel, was first that attitude of receiving the coffee from one place in the world, and all of those things that that Martin talked about. But then as we were really meditating on the interrelated nature, I was thinking that often the way it comes to us is I can't be peaceful and happy because those people over there are being destructive and it's their fault. And the interrelatedness is very scary to us. My survival depends on all these people who may have very, very different ways of thinking and protecting their rights and their values than I do. And it seems like the interrelatedness is often expressed from spiritual traditions, and of course focusing in the we are interaction philosophy, but it needs to be coupled with a kind of trust in something bigger, that we all are an organism that is in its inherent essence wanting more life, wanting to move forward or something. That was what I was struggling with in that moment.
And I appreciate what you bring. It is in that connection, right? And I don't know. So today in the news, I'm a news junkie, and I try not to, but I'm constantly get pulled into it. So what's the headline is what was being headlined today was Major Adams' visit to the border, right? And he came back and he's saying, oh my God, I never seen such suffering. And what I'm saying is, I don't have to go to the border to understand and connect with the kind of suffering that is going on there, right? I don't have to go to Peru to understand the kind of suffering that's going on there, right? And I think that sometimes I live in the experience of something rather than in the humanity of something, in the connection of something. in the felt sense that gets transported, even if I'm not there, that I can have a felt sense of something that's going on somewhere. And, you know, I particularly love in this writing that from Dr. King, his constant invitation, paragraph after paragraph, sentence after sentence, to remind us of the interconnectedness. Interconnectedness, right? That we are all one, that we are in this together, that all of us, not some of us, are responsible for each other. You know, I pause here because it's almost like, and this is how my brain works, it's almost like I hear a voice of a friend, a mentor, a fellow traveler, Dara Williams, and we were talking about, what does our community do when all its leaders have been eradicated? How does that community move forward, right? And that community, I think, moves forward by continuing to remember that we are interconnected and that we can continue to move forward and impact change, right? And that it's not just the responsibility of the leader to create that space for change, but that it's all of our responsibility. That change and the dream didn't only belong to Dr. King, that this is a collective dream. And if we were doing AFOT with Shirley Turcotte, you know, a collective dream, one person may have a dream, but that dream belongs to all of us. Or maybe that person is having that dream for us. And what do we need to do as individuals to keep that dream alive? Go ahead, Robert.
So I'm struggling a little bit to follow them. I think for me, the too many things you brought into this space to integrate it. And so first of all, I'm very touched when you talked about your wife knowing the homeless people, and really for me was what came up was like giving them a sense of belonging that we usually don't extend or to homeless people. And I know in my own case, I have a lot of fear of people who have mental illnesses. And so when I see homeless people on the subway, my first response is fear, not what your wife is doing. And then you showed the images of the January 6th and sort of my edge. I could sort of see the yes, 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 and where I couldn't feel kind anymore was when it got to their desire, or that's at least what I perceived in the picture, their desire for power, which also scares me. And then the interconnectedness, yes, I know that the building I live in was built by people and the building was kept up by people. And I mean, I understand all that, but I'm still struggling to feel my interconnectedness with homeless people. I mean, I know I want to be kind. I know I can practice more kindness, but to really feel that same interconnectedness as with whoever contributed to my education or to my well-being, I want it and I don't have it yet. So I don't know if you have anything you want to say in response to that, or
Robert, I'm smiling because you're not alone. And the thing that keep me separate from other, it's fear. That's what keeps me separate from other people, right? It's fear. It's I don't know who they are, right? And I don't know for you, but for me, it's almost like a daily practice of finding way to connect, really finding way to connect. Um, when I go on a trip, my kids will always say, okay, who you invited to come to your house now? Because it's always something like that, right? I meet someone and then I say, I live in New York City. And when you come to New York City, please come over and visit. And I mean it. Like I do mean it. And it has happened that people have come and they have come to visit. And so what I want to say, for me, it is the fear that separates me. And if I'm aware of that fear, right? If I am in awareness of that fear, then I can be with, what do I need to do? And this is for me. What do I need to do to set it aside, to be able to see and hold the humanity on the other person, to be able to connect beyond the just this moment. You know, my wife is extraordinary, and that's who she is, right? And she practiced that. She really knows their name. She knows their name, and she talks to me in the same way I will be talking to her about my friends. And I don't know that I can get there. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know that for myself. I see you, Lenore, and I see you, Ruth, right? But that doesn't mean that I stop trying. I keep, for me, the people I know by name and they know me by name is every merchant around where I work. That's my niche. The person who I get my coffee or tea from, the breakfast, and, the people at the store. So the invitation for me is to always bring awareness to my fear. So I don't know who will go first, but I think Ruth was, and then Lenore, and then Pauline. And no, what is that for me? Well, I'm saying, so one of my teachers in the tradition of the Vipassana says, I don't have answers, I have responses. I have things that happen in the collective and things that I've experienced. Go ahead, Ruth.
So thank you, Isabel. It's lovely to see you, everyone. It's such a rich discussion, and I just wanted to share a couple of things. One is your beginning and your sharing that you could visit hell and you don't have to live there. It's very powerful for me. And I want my own efforts at trying to visit fewer and fewer times, excuse me, I have to close this. And for shorter periods of time. And how do we do that? I'm getting a call from Thailand, talk about interrelationships. I'm trying to. The other is related to what Lynn and Robert were saying about where I can't, or the fear that gets in, that prevents. And one of the things about Dr. King, who, is a prophet, for me, a prophet, and to remember that he was assassinated when he was 39 years old. He was a baby, but from the time he was so young, the power, and that is not, that is spiritual power for me. I don't know how and that power that leads to a fearlessness. I would listen to him, other leaders like him. I say, where do they get that fearlessness to be able to speak truth to power? There's a wonderful movie on Netflix now called Joy. It's a film of the documentary. It's a documentary of the meeting of Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama. The book, The Power of Joy, and they did a documentary of it. And every day I need to be inspired, and I need to remember. And such leaders are that for me. When I look at I'm sorry, this keeps going on. When I look at that picture of January 6th, it's terrifying. It's just terrifying. And I don't know what to do with that. And I have to work with it all the time of they're humans, they were connected, their own fears. But it's scary for me. I don't know quite how to deal with the level of those fears when you see someone with that kind of anger who is capable of that destruction, because their interest is so profoundly different. And yes, we are connected, and this is all part of being human. And maybe I need to see them in some ways as opportunities, or providing opportunities for me to do practice. I don't know, but so those are just some reactions, and I thank you because the honoring of Dr. King is so critical, and the remembering of everything that he brought to us, continues to bring to us. So thanks.
Thank you, Ruth. I think Lenore and then Pauline.
Yeah, I also thank you, Isabel, for all your sharing. And Martin Luther King has always been a very important person in my life. I had the opportunity when I was a little girl to go on a march for better jobs and freedom so I was there. I just remember his speech and how hot it was in July. So I was like 12 years old, but it had a tremendous impact. He had a tremendous impact on me. One of the things that came up for me today, which we haven't really fully talked about, was how he inspired the kind of communication, the nonviolent communication. And that's such an essential part of who he was, because I think he modeled a lot of how he wanted to be in the world, like Gandhi in some ways. And the sense of, being with people without being violent. And I know Steph had shared something in the chat about being humble. And that really resonated for me too, the humble piece of how do we, and again, how are we going to be principled even if other people aren't principled? And how do we march on in our own principled way? And I believe that's what he did.
Thank you, Lenore. Pauline, I think it's your go now.
Hi, Isabel. I actually I had put up my hand and I took it down because I think that I kind of want to just stay with what's been stirred up in me today, and just really want to honor the day that finished, Martin Luther King. So thanks. yeah, I'll stay with it. Thanks for calling on me.
And you know, I appreciate, can I, and I want to, Ayana, I see you. Robert, can I just say, I really appreciate what you brought forward. And here's what came for me. And this is the interconnectedness, right? For me. I can now see what that meant for you. And I can almost experience that in my body, where all these things, and I have moments like that when I feel like there's so much coming at me that I don't know where to, what to lean into. And what I find helpful for me is the pause. And I don't always remember it. I am so used to moving, going forward, forward, forward. So really appreciating that gentle reminder, Robert. Really gratitude and appreciation for that. And if we are staying together, I have a song that I want to play. I'll play it now. It's just a song. I don't think there's a video. And we'll do the same thing. Just notice what happens when you hear this song. And it's a familiar song because we all have heard it before. Go ahead, Lynn.
Before we have the song, I just wanted to add my 2 cents to the discussion that we've started about the fear of recognizing the interconnectedness. And what Jean said comes to mind about how everybody is beautiful when they're listened to. Say that with this big grin, and there was this confidence that he could listen, meaning listen in that in that focusing way to anybody, and they would be beautiful. And there's something about that that we find over and over by practicing it, trusting it, but that I can imagine listening to those people in the insurrection, to each one of them, and each one of them would be beautiful. And I can imagine that very closely because, of course, I've listened to many, many people in that kind of focusing way. But there's something that reminds me when I think of that when I become fearful of my interconnectedness with everybody and my responsibility, my collective responsibility for all of the hurtful things that are done. I remember that sense that, oh, if I listened, that person would be beautiful.
Well, a lot has been said today, and I'm sure felt by you all. So take a minute or a few minutes to be with everything you have heard and felt inside in response. Take a minute to reflect on your own personal experience and your joys of interconnection, but also any concerns or fears you may have. Just take a minute to reflect on whatever is there for you. And we'll take about 5 minutes to do that, because this is very important for you to be with yourself about all this. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, June.
Oh, I just want to say, and when you're doing the reflection and think about your experience, Is there anything you want to change? Is there anything you want to do better? Reflect on that too. That can be part of it. Thank you.
Maybe we could also write down what there is for us. That always helps me when I'm reflecting on something.
I don't know if that's anything else that arises from the piece. One thing that arises for me in this is more towards more towards the end, you know. And remember, this was a Christmas sermon that Dr. King gave, but he goes on to talk about agape, AGAPE, because I know I have an accent and it may be like, what did she just say? And he talks about it not as just a romantic love, but also a friendship and understanding and creativity and redemption and sort of like goodwill towards everyone. And when I read that, I was really touched by, wow, how did I bring goodwill not only towards other but also towards myself, right? And what does it mean to love thy neighbor as yourself, right? And again, this was a Christmas sermon that he gave. And when am I out of alignment, not only with others, but also towards me? Where I'm not being careful or caring for myself. And and all of this is an invitation to, I think, Lenore, maybe this is what you say at the end. Not only how does this sit with me, but what else can come from this, and how can I move forward with this? And that's the inquiry for me all the time, every moment. Pauline, I see you. Go ahead, you raise your hand.
I did. Hi, Isabel. And I had decided not to until I heard the word redemption. And I thought, oh, here, I have to say something. Because I think there's an old world view, where we sacrifice each other or sacrifice ourselves, and, we become responsible, from the old stories, and I think individually we have to make our own minds up about an individual value system, I'm still in awe of how peacefully and beautifully people can say their wives now, as you did, Isabel, and we celebrate that, and that came through the rainbow movement, and gay rights and that. So it's like we don't need to fight, suffer battles, or I think that there's it's internalizing a new world view of nonviolence. And just to Robert, I really did want to say something to him around my struggle with my own homelessness or sense of belonging, my sense of my own homelessness. And that is often when I don't agree with something that's a collective worldview. And how could it be? Because we're all individual, we're all making sense of this gift of life from now, from our freedom now, so freedom from struggle and all that. So yeah, I just want to come in. Redemption to me just is like an old world view of needing to redeem myself or by good work. I think if I'm in good form and feeling alive, then that is a good work, because I'm pulling from that. General said it so beautifully, and I think that it was really honored in the talk last week. It's that when we're connected from our heart, we're being nourished and we're working. I really felt that sense of connection, and as I do every Monday here, you know, it's our hearts are open. I think, you know, and I think that's enough. We are enough. I am enough. I'm saying that for me. I'm owning it. I am enough when I feel connected, you know, and in that way I can resonate with people that are homeless, anyone in need. But I think that the real challenge for me is to remind them of their own responsibility. You know, I know that there are people that just can't, but it's to ease the pain. I think we can't do it without being connected to our own individual source. So I said more than I said, and in some way I feel like that I really want to get off that mindset of like I'm taking too much time rather than I'm giving off myself. You know, it's like it's a scarcity belief.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh,
So,
that is so beautiful, Pauline. I really appreciate that piece, that rather than thinking of and taking time and taking space to think I'm sharing of myself, I'm bringing forward something, a precious piece of who I am, and sharing it with this community. And we often don't, I know I don't think that way. I'm often like, oh my God, you have an accent, please be quiet, don't say that, don't say this, right? I see
Sure.
Dorothy and then Steph. Go ahead, Dorothy.
You're on mute, Dorothy.
Thinking a lot about what you both just said about taking up space and being here, and how I can, when I move into fear, how I can move into connection. And something you said, Isabel, early when you were talking, there are no days off on seeing each other, seeing each other's eyes. And that just really brought tears to my eyes, because you know, being raised in a family where people didn't look at each other, let alone talk directly to each other, I'm so conscious, and I go through and I say to myself, did I really look into my father's eyes? Did he look into my eyes? My mother, my sister? It's like I don't have much memory of that, so I put up photographs, particularly of my sister, and I look in her eyes into the photograph, and that helps me connect with her. And I see like it's my way of moving through fear of connecting with others, because there's such a tendency in me to look away when I'm fearful. But if I consciously look in people's eyes, that brings me back. It helps dissolve to some degree, not completely, but the fear and anxiety part of it. So that's something I really wanted to share, and also that I can't be all of who I am unless you can be all of who you are. And I see that in my daily life, like with my partner, especially, like the judgments that just come out, like just they roll out of me so automatically. And in that instant, I am not letting him be who he is. And I see it in his face. So Isabel, like somehow, like today for me, where it really touched me is in that the daily, the instantaneous moment by moment tracking of who I am. And that helps me not get so overwhelmed with the change process, but realize it's really moment by moment. So thank you so much, all of you.
Thank you, Dorothy. Steph.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Dorothy, and everybody. What has come up for me, and I wrote it down, and thank you, Isabel, so much. is my deepest fear is fear of disconnection. And yet my response out of fear contributes to disconnection. And so this is the sort of, issue, and this can be in a relationship, it can be globally, it can be in any situation. And so I'm a daily meditator. I really like to stay connected. But when it comes to fear is so powerful. And I loved what was said about bringing awareness. Isabel said this, bringing awareness to my fears. And that is so powerful, because it's like, did faith or fear rule my actions today? And giving faith more strength over the fear. It's a struggle. Yeah. Thank you.
So I put the poem in the chat. If you want to grab it, I will also send it to Lynn so she can send it out to the community. And I'm noticing the time, and I want to play this song. I'm pretty sure many of us have heard it. I don't know if people have heard it, but it's Sweet Honey and the Rocks, and it's called Breath. And for me, the reminder comes when I know that whether I know it or not, my breath is always connected to someone else's breath. Oh, I'll write it here. Her name, she's a Palestinian writer. Her name is Naomi Shibad Nayek. And I think she's mostly known for her poem Kindness. Like, everyone knows that poem. And so, but I mean, she's just great, and I love it. And when we were doing the attunement at the beginning, and I say your ancestor, your teachers, your mentors, this is what I mean. Any one of us can be a mentor to each other, can be a teacher to each other. In this moment, in this community, we just created that, right? So I'm gonna play this, and as a way to close, and just really the invitation. I think it's what I think the invitation is what Jung say, and that maybe not capturing the whole thing, but it's that we bring awareness to every moment and carry forward. How do we want to impact the word? And the word can be, like my wife, knowing who is who, the name of each person. And to me, that is so powerful, because how many of them have not been seen by me, by you, by anyone? And the fact that she knows who they are, and they know who she is, right? It's just beautiful. And so just taking on, I don't know what you would take on, but what would you take on from that Takin invitation around interconnectedness, right? I don't know, Robert, you were referring to your building. Sometimes my connection, I recently moved to the Rockaways 3 years ago, and my connection is understanding the history of this community, right? Who is this community? How did they come about? And understanding the fear that some in this community may have about me moving here, right? Not making them wrong, but understanding, right? Understanding and creating space for that. So I don't know if there's anything before I play this final song that anyone wants to bring forward.
I just wanted to say, Isabel, we have till 1:45, so I think we could hear the song and hear a few comments after. And then we'll have a final goodbye at 9:45.
All right, so I will do that. Okay, and just acknowledging that this playlist is from a friend who very courageously and generously offered it to me. Her name is Karen Williams. And that's the other thing, sort of like acknowledging and expressing gratitude for everyone who contributes to you in whatever way they may be contributing, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be
overhang that made me self-conscious.
Wonderful.
Yeah, we want to hear from anybody, just some brief comments that will, we have 5 minutes left, and I'd love to hear from as many people as possible.
When you spoke of the homeless people, it awakened some shame in me. We're not usually in New York, but we were helping Bob's daughter move. So we were in New York City, in Manhattan, and we walked by some homeless people, and I felt off. I felt shame in just walking by. I felt like I should be doing something, and I didn't know what. And we were hurrying on to do something else. But there was a shame there that I'm not quite sure. I mean, I'm not in New York City usually, but so I don't know what further can be done by that. Again, we don't often ride the subway, but we did. And we often don't know what on earth we're doing. So I ended up in a conversation with a stranger that happened to be in having eye contact. And it felt good to be able to ask for help and have a bit of a conversation as we were riding. But that sense of connection feels wonderful, even though it's a short-lived eye contact conversation with someone. But the past, walking past and not feeling connected with somebody in need felt shameful. Just thought I'd comment on those experiences. And for me, the city, which often is a fearful place to be rather than, yeah, out in the woods. But I was more comfortable trying to make some connection with a stranger there in some situations, but not in others. And I am comfortable with people with mental illness because I've worked with them so often, and often just being seen, you know, so if we had a psychotic person on the unit, just saying good morning, saying hello, speaking to them, having eye contact when they couldn't always, but meant something to them because they often aren't seen. They often aren't seen. So I'm not sure where all this thought fits in, but just a comment.
Thank you, Nancy. And I think that all of us can relate to that. Not just with the homeless, but with anyone else where we don't know how to intervene, how to be present, whether it's someone that comes to us and talking about a loss, you know, a separation. Those are the moments that we experience as human, where the connection seems to have been severed. And I dare say, we can find a way to reconnecting in whatever way that means. Dorothy, I'm not sure if your hand is up from before or if you wanted to say something. If you wanted to say something.
Oh, no, no, thank you. It was up from before. Thanks. Thanks, so.
I put some stuff in the chat. I put the Honey and the Rock, Sweet Honey and the Rock video, the Dr. King speech, you know, and like I say, I listen to these things not just when it's Dr. King birthday or celebration, just as a reminder for myself of when I am, disconnected. And then I use a lot of these things. If you come to my space where I work or in my office, I have a lot of little things that people say to me. And I want to remember those, right? It may be a client, it may be a friend. And so I have all these little notes because I alone will not be able to remember everything. And so I relied on people and on others to remind me to stay connected and to stay in awareness and to inhabit the divine, whatever that means for me in that moment. In one moment it might be the divine is the Buddha for me. The next moment it's Yemaya. The next moment it's, San Carlos, whatever and the next moment is a tree. The next moment is my dog. And so whatever that means for me, in whatever moment that I stay present and that I acknowledge the humanity in others, moment by moment by moment. And sometimes I forget. I just forget. And I'm going about my business and I have to bring myself back. And that's what being human is. And, I really, truly love what Dr. King say in this speech. He says, we can't ever give up. We must work passionately and unrelentingly for first-class citizenship for everyone. But we can't give up, right? And so that's a remembering of that ongoingly. So I don't know if that's a way to say goodbye here, but what I would say is I am deeply grateful and honored to have shared the space with all of you. And then I will read this little thing that somebody gave me many years ago. And it says, everything wonderful begins with a dream.
Thank you so much, Isabel. Wow, you've given us a lot of nourishment that has to last us for a while until you can come back. Isabel has to get the bus at 5:30 in the morning to get to work and only can come here maybe sometimes at the very beginning, but usually only when it's a holiday and there's no work. So thank you so much, Isabel. You've given us a lot to chew on and think about and meditate on.